It's so great to see you, everyone. I wish I weren't seeing you as the Brady Bunch, but rather at a reception in our gallery, but hopefully that will happen soon. I'm Pam Schaff. I'm the director of the HEAL program at USC at Keck, and HEAL stands for Humanities, Ethics, Art, and Law. And it is a 4-year program that's integrated actually into the core curriculum for the medical students, but it has grown over the last several years to include a lot of co-curricular activities. And one of the smartest things that I did, I will take credit, as director of HEAL when we could expand our co-curricular activities, was to invite Ted to be our artist in residence here at Keck. And he has created just a remarkable, he's helped change really the culture and the whole sense of our space at Keck in terms of artistic beauty and inquiry and creativity. So I'm really grateful to him, and I think this project is his most genius idea. Originally, what he did for us and continues to do for us is to invite artist patients to create work that represents their lived experience, and we invite those artist patients into our gallery where they show their work and speak with our entire community, faculty, staff, and students. And those exhibits are aligned with our core curriculum. So for instance, when students are studying the pulmonary system, we have an artist who has a condition or life story that involves a particular aspect of that system, and the students learn more about that. The artist and researcher collaboration Ted imagined and brought to us as an idea, and this is the 4th artist and researcher show. They've been amazing. What happens, as you know, is that an artist and a researcher meet, and the artist imagines the work in an artistic way, and the product of those conversations is exhibited in our gallery. Sadly, that's not happening right now, but we believe it will. As soon as we have access to that space and are allowed back and allowed to gather, we will hang this show and invite others probably as well. But there have been, I see from the website, which Ted, I didn't even realize, there have been 47 teams since we started this project. And so I just want to thank all of you who've made it happen. I looked at the website. I'm going to just show you in a minute what that looks like very briefly so you can see, and Ted and I will send you a link to that. But it's just stunning. It's strikingly beautiful and so imaginative, and I can't believe that I have to wait to see it in person, but there is a way to see it, at least virtually. So let me just let you see that for a second, and then we can go back. So can you see this now?
Yeah.
All right. So the HEAL program's website talks about all our programs. I've highlighted art and medicine, and this is the front page here. And hold on, here's artist and researcher 4. And then if I click on this right here, this is what the website looks like. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so you'll see the work, and there are some videos. Here's one. I'm not going to show it because I know hopefully you guys will talk and share some of what you talked about there, but there are videos of conversations between the artists and the researchers. So this is really a lovely thing to explore when you have time. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Ted.
Well, I just want to thank everybody, because I know this, with COVID, along with everything else, this is not how we planned this. But as Pam said, we will do it as a live show, but at some point. But I hope you guys at least got something out of the interaction and the artists going to the lab. And I hope the researchers got something from seeing how the artist approached it. So we sort of thought we would just let everybody talk for a minute or two if they have anything to say about the collaboration, maybe how it was different working with another researcher, working with another artist the way you normally would. And that's sort of, we just thought we'd open it up to you guys if you have anything to say.
I've only done a couple of collaborations before with other artists, and I was uncomfortable because I was always felt I was being careful not to step on their style or their way, because I'm still just learning mine. And with Yuli, at least it was science and art, and it didn't feel as much of a, you know, a challenge. I still felt that I wanted him to approve of it, and Ted, but it was different. And now we're pals, and that's always fun. So.
Right. How about Rebecca? You, yours looks so similar to, I mean, you really almost nailed it in a literal sense to your researchers' scanned images. And I was just wondering if how much of those you had seen before you did it, or was that just a coincidence? Or
so Axel Montagna does MRI research on Alzheimer's and on brain inflammation, and we spent a lot of time sort of talking about the kind of work I did and my relationship to art making and his relationship to what he liked to study. And then he showed me these secondarily colored images that had been taken of brain image of neural networks and brain connections and the different kinds of systems in brains that they were looking at. And I mean, I think that this must have, I don't know, Ted, you can either own it or just can call it or chalk it up to coincidence, but I think you knew my work well enough to know that all of my work is about community and connection.
yeah.
And so it was an incredibly fortuitous pairing because Axel's work is about the way that networks are formed in the brain. So the way connections are made and the way some connections are good and some connections are bad, right? And so, these the way electrical firings sort of come off in the brain, ones that are good and ones that are bad. And that I think about that in a sort of a metaphysical way in terms of the way humans interact with one another. That's a big aspect of my work. Yeah, so it was easy to think about that. As he and I talked, it was really easy to think about how to relate to that work. And the images that he showed, I'm not working in wire right now, but I had done a lot of work in electrical wire, these suspended sculptures. And so I decided to go back to that as a medium for this project. And so it was great fun to make a piece in that medium and reflect, and to make a piece that reflected the kind of networking that Axel talked about. My own husband is a scientist at JPL, and we've been together for over 30 years, and I've long thought that the relationship between pure science and pure art is actually just different means of expressing creativity. They're both about looking at an idea and figuring out how you want to pursue it, right? And so I love this project, because it's about connecting people together and finding ways to communicate similar meanderings, I suppose.
Great. So on that note, Martin, you've done 3 of these now, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. This is my 3rd one.
Yeah,
and,
so what have you gotten out of it as a researcher?
Well, as a researcher, I think research is part of being in art at the same time. It's sort of one field. And even though it doesn't look that way, but I remember that I received an award from the Netherlands Academy for Arts and Sciences, and so therefore you can see that that academy actually had both aspects in their vision. So this year I was hooked up with Esther Pachar, and I see her that she attends and this meeting. So it's very nice to see you again, Esther. And as this is the third time that I've been linked to an artist, all three artists have actually talked about the exact, or I talked to them at the exact same topic, which is human papillomavirus. That's the virus that causes several forms of cancer, but also can cause warts. And I'm just stunned on every time how a artist interprets what I say in such a different way. And so this is now indeed the third time. And Esther picked up on one particular aspect of my research, and that is the link to warts. There are about maybe a dozen patients in the world that have an immune deficiency. And because of that, they cannot resist infection with human papillomavirus, and especially the human papillomavirus types that cause these warts. And these warts keep on growing in a massive way. It's reflected here a little bit in Esther's painting on the feet and the hands of these patients. It can actually, these patients, the warts can grow up to a foot long, and they can cover their whole body. And so the appearance that it creates is what you can very clearly see here on the hands and feet, is that they look like the bark of a tree. And therefore, colloquially, these men have been called tree men. And I have now been in contact with 6 of them, met them either in Indonesia, found that there was a link between 3 of them, which is very interesting because we are now the only laboratory in the world that actually has material from these patients that can do a comparative analysis on what deficiencies do they share. And indeed, they all have an immune deficiency that deals with skin immunity, which makes sense because that's why they can't resist these warts. My research on that is how the virus gets into your body and especially into your cells. And Esther really tried to catch that in this particular picture, because the background of this man, which she called "I am a man, not a tree," which is also extremely powerful, because you will see such a patient and you think, oh my God, can I even touch the patient? Which is actually, you are able to, because if you do not have that immune deficiency, you are immune, and therefore the virus will not cause any harm in you. But they are absolutely human beings. Below or beneath those warts is a human. And the title of her work, "I am a man, not a tree," is therefore extremely appropriate. So the other part that I study is indeed how does the virus get into these patients and into their cells. And you can see that because she sort of draw a path with a big cell behind the patient or behind this tree man, and it shows all kinds of channels that the virus can use to actually enter the cell and therefore transform a normal skin cell into a wart cell. And so this is caught in this beautiful picture. She used a very nice technique on it, which is that if you look at the picture with black light, you can actually see the virus lighting up, and you can see the process of the virus getting into these cells. Yeah, is it possible to show both pictures? Both
at once. Well, I can, but
both at once? Yeah.
me show you it. It'll be small, but you can take a look and see what you think. This is where the way I can show both at once.
Mhm. Yeah, so on the left you see the regular painting, but on the right you see it when the black light is shown on it. And now you can see all these channels that come from the outside to the inside, and they light up in this blue light. And I think this is an extremely creative way of showing how the virus gets into these cells. And then the final result is what happens to the patient. So Esther, I think you did a fantastic job here because it shows multiple aspects of this particular disease. Yeah, the only thing that I can say about it, I think that this is a completely new disease. This has never, even though some of these patients have been described, they have been diagnosed in the wrong way. And now that we have much more information on them, it's going to have a new name in the future. Yeah, so very intrigued by now being linked for the third time and seeing such a different interpretation of my work in these paintings.
Great.
Esther, would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, thank you. Great smile, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, I know you used a lot of big, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. When I painted this, I really felt for the tree man when Dr. Cass explained about him and how he actually met him and touched his hand. That really was something, because you would be afraid to touch somebody with a hand like that, and so it was really warming to see that, and to see the poor man who his foot sometimes weighed like about 13 pounds. And I can't imagine somebody living like that, because I broke my ankle in January and it swelled up, and it was really hard for me just to get around and painful. And I just can't imagine this man, the tree man, with his hands like that. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't work. He couldn't hardly walk, and he was treated differently. He had to leave his wife and family because he couldn't work. So to me, it was like, and he at one time wanted to commit, I believe, suicide, and because he didn't want to live like that. So to me, it was so sad for him. I took, I don't know if you noticed it, but when Kobe died, that was the funeral, and I took one of the faces of the ex-basketball player, Rick Fox, because he had this painful look on his face at Kobe's funeral. So I thought I'll use that because that's how I feel that these poor guys, the tree men, how they feel. So I wanted to reflect that. And I use the fluorescent light. I love it. My eyes are sensitive to light, but I love light. And what I do is I'm also dyslexic, and I see light breaks up into tiny dots, and I use a lot of pointillism. So when I started using the pointillism, I found out by accident that when I use the pointillism, the fluorescent light, when I use the UV light, really pops it out. So you really haven't seen the last stage of this, because when you see this picture at night and I throw the UV light on with a strobe, his whole figure turns black, but the light all around him comes through, shining like a strobe. And I thought it was a pretty powerful piece, especially when I called it, I Am a Man, Not a Tree. And thanks to Dr. Cass, I was able to pull it off. I get very emotional now, I'm sorry. But I really hope he can find a cure for these guys. It'd be awesome if he could. And That's it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm.
Yeah, and just for all of you to know that the man that she displayed, even though she used another character, but the man is called Day Day, and Day Day has died. And so therefore her art is actually also a tribute to Day Day. And for several other patients that I've met that have in the meantime also died. And so therefore it's a real tribute to these men and how they are affected by this virus.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in about their partnership or their work?
So working with my researcher, her, wait, how do you pronounce her name? Zhuanghe? I can't pronounce her name, but her work was all about metabolomics and how your environment and like where you live affects your health and your well-being and even how you learn in your environment. And that really resonated with me because I'm one of those people trying to go off-grid. And I also have an autistic son, and she mentioned how autism is kind of influenced by these environmental factors too. And that was like part of her whole research. And it wasn't just autism, it was like cancer and all these other things. All these autoimmune diseases are caused by living in heavily polluted environments. And with metabolomics, you soak in the toxins into your body just by breathing or by what touches your skin. So the piece that I made has the metabolomics chart in the background, which is kind of like the pathways, you know, like the digital coding for like computer coding and stuff. And then the lungs is one of the main research things that she pointed out is how everything comes in through your lungs and you breathe it in. And then it filters through your whole body through your lungs. So, I mean, my piece is just basic and simple. But I put, you know, like the darker areas around there to show kind of like the smoke or the toxicity in there. And then the bright blue color represents, you know, like in nature, you see poison dart frogs have those neon colors. So that shows that they're symbolically toxic along with spiders and other creatures like that. So I put that bright blue in there to show the toxicity coming into the lungs. And that's about it. I mean, nothing too big there.
Well, it's a beautiful piece.
Really, really gorgeous.
So Raymond, this was your first time with us. How did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much. And so my research is with hearing loss, in particular people who have cochlear implants. So I think most people know what a cochlear implant is. And I'm a cochlear implant user myself. I lost my hearing when I was a child, and I got a cochlear implant at that time, and became interested in it all through my schooling, and then decided to study it. And so one of they're really medical miracles. I mean, because if I turn off my implant, I'm deaf. I'm completely deaf. And when I turn it on, I'm able to understand you very well. So speech comprehension and quiet is actually quite remarkable. But speech comprehension and noise is challenging, and speech and music appreciation is very difficult. And so this is something that can be very disturbing to somebody who receives a cochlear implant and they get it turned on for the first time. I work with a lot of people who are musicians and they lost their hearing, and then they get the cochlear implant, and they, you know, the audiologist will tell them, you know, try to dampen their expectations and say that, you know, listening to music can be very difficult. But you know, if you're a musician, you want it. You want to be able to hear again. You want normal hearing, and you turn it on, and it's not quite normal. And so I know from experience that, you know, with after having it now, I've had my cochlear implant for 30 years. I enjoy music very much, but it's not quite normal, and I derive a lot of meaning from it. And so when I was you know, paired with Ching Ching, I was really looking forward to working with her, and we started interacting, and she came to one of the workshops that we put together, And so we have workshops where we get people with cochlear implants, and some of the more seasoned recipients try to encourage some of the new people. In these workshops, we're bringing in some great musicians from Thornton to as leaders of activities, and we've moved everything to Zoom now. And so once the pandemic came to town, Ching Ching and I we kind of lost contact a little bit, and I was happy when she circled around and I saw what she created, because her work it really taps into a lot of the aspects of hearing loss, and or one of them is social isolation. So if you watch the video, it's very provocative, and it touches into aspects of what hearing loss, some of the aspects of hearing loss. One of them is social isolation, and another one is tinnitus. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, tinnitus, or some people pronounce it tinnitus, is a ringing in the ear. It's kind of like a phantom sound, and it can be quite eerie. And I think she did a good job of working sound and video imagery into it to convey some of these social aspects.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you, Ted, and also the scientists that I pair up with, Raymond. I think he left. It was really honored to be part of the project, and it's great working with him. We met 2 times, and then I kind of took on the working on a video on my own. So there was a bit of surprise, good surprise for him during the time that is a COVID time, and I filmed the video. And I'm always interested in science and sort of like spiritual, mythical explanation behind a lot of things. And so I wanted to kind of pair up with these two together, and also did a lot of research myself, including the sound. And I knew that I wanted to have, I felt like the video is the best way to work on this project with the sound and image. So it was great to have, to show my work, and then also to be part of the research and team and the show.
So the entire lab that I have met Lisa twice. Let me move this to the other side. And we actually kind of regret it because we never took a picture together when you visit the lab. So we really want to show her piece, on our lab website, because I feel when I spoke with Lisa, we were talking about only my research, not really, how she, presented her artwork. So I was always talking about how we want to use this lung organoid or the lung progenitors to fix the injured lung. We want to use this as an exogenous stem cells and then transplant into the patient's injured lung, and hopefully they can incorporate into the lung tissue and then fix the lung. And I guess that's why in her artwork, there are some side of the lung looks like an injury, and then she put the lung organoids in there. So she actually asked me if I want to see the piece before, but I want it to be a surprise. And when she sent it out, I shared with the whole lab. We were also surprised because it's such a great artwork. And my feeling is that she actually gave us a very soft touch when we see her artwork, because the color is very soft, and it's kind of giving us a more like a comfort feeling when we are in the lab, because the lab is always, the science field is always like, we only value the solid data or the solid numbers, and it's more a rigid work in the lab. And when we saw her piece, we just feel like, oh, this is such a warm piece that everybody feels a great, that we are really grateful to be part of this artwork. And especially during this time, everyone is kind of self-quarantined at home, and we don't really have a lot of events going on. It's either work or lab. And so when we saw her piece, we really feel like we're still connected to the work instead of just having the work and the home. And I actually feel really bad because her work cannot really hang in the showroom. She mentioned that there is gonna be a light effect, if I remember it right, when she really put the piece in the showroom, that I can see through the piece and maybe a little bit light effect on that. So hopefully one day, if all this is been over, I can really see the art piece with my own eyes. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from anybody?
Yeah, it was very difficult photographing transparency or translucency. So I don't think that the images really communicated that idea of translucency and seeing through to the other side. That said, it was quite a journey just to document the piece with what I have at my disposal. So I borrowed lights and backdrop and just tried, different kinds of lighting to show the transparency, but I don't think I was particularly effective at it. But in the photographing of it came to me sort of the answer to my query, and when it will be installed, I would like to have it 9 inches exactly from the wall or in space, and the back of these Lunganoid clusters, I want to adhere a Mylar mirror, because the idea of looking through to what's beyond is actually you. So I wouldn't have discovered that meaning for the piece for myself until I actually did the photography. And the last thing I did is, well, I have to show the backside because it needs to be seen all the way through to the other side. And that's when it made me realize how to finish the piece. So at the moment though, I'm grateful for COVID because I've been on furlough and I was able to devote all my time to it.
Ted, we wanted to share a little bit.
Oh, sure.
We work at the Maternal Child Adolescent Center for Infectious Diseases and Virology. And our clinic is really dedicated to HIV-infected women and their families. And we wanted to, we had a intervention where we were asking our participants to take photos representing what they felt HIV stigma was. And we met with Q, and we told her all about our research and the women who participated in these photographs, and how amazing they were. I was very impressed with Q and her understanding of the difficulties that our women went through. She wanted to go to our clinic. She wanted to meet with our patients. She wanted to meet with our pharmacist, which she did, because the whole idea of all of these pills really kind of fascinated her, because she spoke to some of our patients who had been around for a long time, and when they first started taking medications, you know, they had handfuls, literally handfuls. Now we're lucky. Some people can take just one pill. But so you had this wonderful idea, because she does three-dimensional work, sculptures. And what she wanted to do was create something that was interactive with the audience and had them feel what it was like to be surrounded by all of these pills. And I don't know if she was gonna like have something maybe that dispensed them. One of our participants had her hand holding her pill for the first time she was going to take her pill. And this really fascinated Q, and she wanted to bring this patient in and make a mold of her hand so that it would be part of the installation and part of the exhibit of showing what it was like to hold these pills. So she met with our pharmacist, and she met with a patient, and she didn't have because of COVID, she didn't have the opportunity to really make her three-dimensional sculpture. So what she did was, as you can see, she took the photographs that our patients took, and she put them in a frame of multiple pills and then a gold frame. And her explanation and how this project affected her was so moving. It just told us a lot about how these women's stories need to be out there, and people need to understand, and they have so much to offer. But I hope everybody will have a chance to read her. She can't be with us today because she has a class, but I hope everyone will read her explanation of how she reacted and what these photographs meant to her, and how
and her video, she explains it all on the video too. What was amazing, she was, you know, in her video, she talks about sort of being amazed that some of these patients have had to take 80 pounds worth of pills in a lifetime.
Right.
And you forget sort of how they add up over time. And I have to say, she's somebody who was really affected by COVID because she is a very successful multidisciplinary artist. I think she wanted to use some virtual reality and some motion, and she, I think more than anybody, was sort of limited by having to go online, but hopefully, you know, once we get online, she can.
But it was a real thrill for us to work with her and to listen to what she was saying, and how she interpreted what our patients have to go through.
I just, before we end, because we're almost out of time here, I just want to say that, you know, there have been a few times over the years where people who, you know, so many artists are used to doing sort of an internal imagery, and there have been times where people have met a researcher and then just blanked or frozen and not been able to come up with something because they had a really hard time visualizing someone else's work. And I just think Pam will attest to this. This year's work was just exceptional. We didn't have any of that. I just loved everybody's images, and the fact that you guys all did it in spite of COVID or because of COVID. I'm so happy, and I just can't wait till we can actually stage it and other people can see your work.